This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Catherine Shen. Turtles are among one of the oldest reptiles to walk the planet, and that's not just a pun about their age. As Cy Montgomery says in her new book of Time and Turtles, turtles live slow. Although turtles often live long lifespans, are among some of the most resilient animals on the planet, human presence has meant a huge threat to their species. Cy spent time working with the people that have dedicated their lives to rehabilitating these fascinating creatures. And she joins us now from New Hampshire to talk about her book of Time and Turtles. Cy, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Oh, thrilled to be here.
And we also have Matt Patterson, who's a fellow turtle lover and illustrator of this book and their accompanying picture book, The Book of Turtles, who is also here with us. Matt, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
And here's a question for our listeners. Matt and Cy believe everyone has a turtle story. What's yours? Let us know. So we obviously have to start with both of your origin stories. Cy, I'm going to start with you. How did you get interested in turtles?
Now, I was born in 1958, and like most of us born during that era, when we were little, our parents took us to Woolworths, and we came home with a little red-eared baby turtle. And these darling turtles, everyone loved them, but we weren't given proper instruction of how to care for them. So their shells got soft, and our mothers flushed them and then got us a new one and thought we wouldn't notice, but we did. And then later, growing up, at one point we lived in Virginia, and you could go into the woods and find a box turtle when it rained, invariably. So I've loved turtles ever since I was small. But it wasn't until I met Matt Patterson just like 6 years ago.
6 years ago.
Yeah, that I really took a deep dive into turtles and then soon felt 3 books coming on.
I'm still a little shocked at the whole flushing situation. I'm going to marinate on that a little bit. But Matt, what's your origin story?
My story, I have loved turtles my whole life, as long as I can remember, since I could talk and probably before. I grew up, my dad was a biology teacher, so we always had animals all around us. And some of my earliest memories are of looking for turtles with my dad. And I grew up observing turtles, looking for turtles. We used to hatch turtle eggs. And of course, I used to draw and paint turtles. And my parents saved some of my early drawings. And I saw them recently. And a lot of them are turtles and dinosaurs, of course. So my whole life, I have always loved turtles. I've had turtles. I've always loved looking for turtles every time we would go anywhere. I remember when I was a kid, we went to Disney World. And I don't really remember being at Disney too much, but I remember on the way into Disney, we saw a gopher tortoise on the side of the road eating some grass. So I remember that.
I love that you share that because I'm originally from California and used to go to Disneyland, and they actually have a pond there that has turtles. So the moment you said that, I'm like taken back to that time where they have a turtle pond. So.
That's what I would remember.
Yeah. And turtles, I think they appeal to us for so many reasons. Even baby turtles look like adorable little grandmothers and grandfathers.
Perfect miniatures.
And we love that they have, that they carry their shell, their house on their back. It's not like they can leave their shell. It's part of their skeleton. But we love seeing their little heads peeking out from under these things. But for me, the reason that I wanted to write about turtles now in my life, this is like my 35th or 36th book. The last big book that I devoted years of research to was Soul of an Octopus, which examined through this really fascinating and largely unknown marine invertebrate one of the important questions in philosophy, which is consciousness. Well, after I turned 60, I felt like I was ready to write a book that would examine the other hard question in philosophy, which is time. And who better to accompany me on this journey and be my teacher than turtles, these ancient creatures who arose with the dinosaurs and lived to great age and pretty much embody the concepts of patience and fortitude.
Well, and then with what you just said, they're one of the oldest species on the planet. They were around when dinosaurs were around. How have they evolved and how have they changed, or have they changed since you dived into studying turtles?
Well, turtles have been around for over 200 million years. They arose the same time as the dinosaurs, and they arose not as you would think. They arose from the bottom up. They evolved from the bottom up. One of the oldest ancestors is called Papakeles, which sounds like a pizza place, but it's not. It means grandfather of turtles. And he looked like a lizard, and he had what was the beginning of a plastron, the hard belly shield. And about 20 million years later, the carapace, the top shell, evolved. But if you would go back 200 million years ago and you saw a turtle, you would recognize it as a turtle because the design really hasn't changed. It's been so successful. I mean, they survived asteroid impact 66 million years ago. They've survived ice ages. It's us that are having trouble surviving.
That's right. I like to say that the turtle evolved from the bottom up. Everyone thinks that what makes a turtle is the shell, and they are correct. But it was the bottom shell that arose first. And that was just one of the gobsmackingly unexpected things that I learned about turtles while working on this book, these 2 books, and soon to be 3 with Matt.
Well, I'm glad it shocked you because it shocked me too. But it makes so much sense. But I don't really ever thought of them that way. So when I was reading your book, I was like, oh my God, that's true. And Sai, at the start of the book too, you let readers know that you're not disclosing the name and locations of some of these turtle rescue leagues on purpose. Can you talk about why that is?
Yeah, well, turtles, as Matt said, are highly endangered. We think they're common because we see them sitting on logs and we notice them crossing the roads. But even common species aren't as common as they were. And 61% of the over 350 species of turtles are in danger of extinction right now. And all the usual suspects are at play, habitat destruction and climate change and just humans everywhere and nowhere for animals to be. But poaching is on top of this. There's an enormous illegal trade in turtles for pets, for medicine, and for meat. And it is such a serious problem that people speak of the Asian turtle crisis, because in Asia, where much of the trade is centered, they've almost vacuumed up all the turtles in the wild, and now they've come over to North America, where more species of turtles exist than anywhere else in the world. And our Native Americans often refer to North America as Turtle Island because we have the most speciose continent when it comes to turtles. And so these poachers, they're actually combing the scientific literature for the sites of researchers' study areas. And one person published in a journal where she'd been studying turtles for years, and just months after that, all her turtles were gone because poachers had come in there.
And this is something that has been happening for a while. It's nothing new, sadly. So what is happening to the turtles when they do get trafficked?
Well, a lot of it is for the pet trade, for pets. Like Sai said, there's other reasons for meat, for traditional medicines that don't work. I mean, you see a turtle and you think, wow, it lives so long. If I eat its shell, I'll live that long. Well, you won't. But
oh, you might as well eat your fingernails.
Because that's what their shell's made out of.
Right. So, I mean, it's a tragedy because, it's traditional Chinese medicine, which has a huge pharmacopoeia, and most of it is plant medicine. And a lot of it is effective. But there's a small number of medicines that are made out of animals. And these include some of the most endangered animals in the world because there's such a hunger for it. Some of it is medicine to cure people who have actual diseases. It's a shame that these sick people are not getting medicines that are going to help them. A lot of them, though, are for supplements that are supposed to make you more virile or more beautiful or live longer. And eating a turtle doesn't do that either, but it does wipe out a beautiful animal who should live for, in some cases, over 100 years.
And even people just unknowingly taking a turtle from the wild is really devastating to the population, because you see a turtle and people don't realize if you take that one turtle, you want to have it as a pet. If you take that one turtle, you're really hurting that local population, because a turtle will lay hundreds of eggs in its lifetime, and maybe only 1 or 2 will reach its breeding age. So just taking one turtle from the wild it's really hurtful.
And we look at a turtle crossing the street and we think, oh, that's nice. But that turtle is a miracle because literally over 90% of turtle eggs never even hatch. And most of those hatchlings get eaten. Everyone eats them.
Chipmunks eat them. Insects eat them. Birds eat them.
Frogs eat them.
Fish eat them.
We've been releasing baby turtles that were hatched in our incubators into ponds and have frogs leap into our palm trying to eat our baby turtles.
Even plants will go after turtle eggs. If it's really dry out, they'll send roots in to suck out the moisture. So everyone is after turtles.
And so every adult turtle that you see really is a miracle. And we need to leave those turtles in the wild, and we need to let them cross the roads.
My mind is so blown right now with what you just shared. Actually, last year I learned there was a turtle that showed up in my backyard, and we do have a brook in the back, and it just freaked me out because I was like, that is such a far way. How did you make it out here? And I quickly just Googled it and learned that you're supposed to let them just chill there and hang out, and they'll find their way back. And so I was sad. I was sad. I left for work and came home, and he was no longer there. But
you know what? It might have been she. It might have been a she.
It could have been
laying eggs.
Yeah.
And Catherine, you're a turtle hero because you didn't move that turtle. A lot of people who love turtles, their heart's in the right place, but they don't realize why the turtles are far away from their river. And they're on this intimate, important, essential errand. Most of the time, it's a female who's looking for a place to lay her eggs, and she doesn't want to lay her eggs near the water. She needs to lay her eggs in sandy soil where there's some sunshine. And they make these arduous, long journeys to get to these important places. So you were absolutely right not to disturb that turtle. It would be like you found, a pregnant lady about to give birth, and she was almost at the hospital door. And then you took her back to her job or something.
Wow, that sounds terrible.
Yeah. Even if it's a male turtle, they know us guys too, we know where we're going.
That's right. And the guys are looking for the ladies.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so excited to add Turtle Hero to my CV, and I did take about a zillion pictures.
Put it at the top of the list.
And so one of my favorite parts of your book really is learning how turtles have very distinct personalities, and they even have thoughts and feelings. Can we talk about that? What are some distinct feelings?
Definitely.
Absolutely. Well, yeah. Do you want to start, Matt? You've known turtles since you were
I have a turtle that I've had her for 26 years or 20. I keep saying 26. I think it's 27 years now.
It changes every year.
It does change every year, doesn't it? But they're all individuals. They all have different personalities, just like we do, just like our cats or our dogs do. Some are bold, some are shy, some love attention, love their necks scratched, their head scratched, their shell scratched. And turtles, just because they're all individuals like we are, in our book of turtles, we have a whole section on celebrity turtles.
Which I enjoyed very much.
My favorite turtle celebrities is the celebrity couple.
It's the It couple.
Yeah, it was like
it was the It couple.
And this is so like people. One day, they'd been together for 115 blissful years of turtle marriage. And then one day, the female woke up and just could not stand the sight of her mate. And a lot of my girlfriends totally relate to this. And she would bite his shell until it bled. These were great big Galapagos tortoises. Yeah. And so getting bitten by somebody like that is a big deal. And so, they tried everything. They tried romantic dinners. They would both eat watermelon together and hopefully fall back into love. But no, nothing worked. They even tried sex toys, but nothing worked. And so now they're apart again for 115 years. But they are so like us. And this is not, many times when you talk about animals having thoughts and feelings, people say, oh, anthropomorphism, you're projecting human emotions on animals. But emotions have adaptive value. They did not arise de novo in humans. Emotions help you form affiliations. They help you evaluate your world. And so, of course, other animals have this. They may not have the same thoughts and feelings as we do, or fish would be asking to be taken from the water, which they are not. And I don't need to look under my tail like my dog sometimes does. So, we don't all have the same needs and thoughts at the same time, but we do have thoughts and needs and memories and emotions. When we first visited Turtle Rescue League, which is where a lot of the action of our book takes place, we were immediately met by a turtle named Pizza Man, who marched right up to us, stopped right at my feet, and performed a greeting as obvious as a handshake. He jerked his head to the right, then back to the center, then to the left, then back to the center, and stared up into my face. And then he marched on to meet Matt. And there, if anything, his ardor grew, because even though it was February in New England, Matt was wearing, as usual, flip-flops, and Matt's feet were warm. So the turtle stood right on top of his warm feet and performed the exact same greeting. And Alexia Bell, who founded the league, told us, this turtle just needs to be where the action is. He's very involved. He greets every visitor. And then there's other turtles that want nothing to do with you. But I know people like that too.
Right. Turtles and people essentially were the same thing.
Yeah.
Well, and then so
Turtles are people too.
Exactly. We got to treat them. You got to treat them right. And you mentioned action. I want to talk about snapping turtles, because snapping turtles have gotten a really bad reputation. And capturing and killing snapping turtles is actually legal in Massachusetts. Can you set the record straight on the snappers? Give them the voice that they deserve.
Yeah, we love snapping turtles, and snapping turtles, to a lot of people, are scary. They're very prehistoric looking, but they only snap when they're out of the water defending themselves, because if a person's in front of them, that's a big monster to them. But they're very important. They are vultures of ponds and lakes and rivers and streams. They eat dead things. A lot of people think that they'll attack you if you go swimming, which would be wild if they did, because we wouldn't be safe in any lake or pond or river. It would be on the news all the time. Another snapping turtle attack. But they also think that they eat baby ducklings or geese. They don't. Maybe once in a while, a rare case that might happen, but it's most likely like a fox or another predator eating those baby birds. So
yeah, they're decavores.
Snapping turtles are very They're very, very important.
Yeah, they eat dead things, and when you think of it, would you rather find something already dead to eat, like all humans do, or would you have to go out and kill your food with your face? It's much easier.
Kill it with your face. That's
a new bumper sticker. I prefer the first option. I'm just speaking for myself. I can't speak for anyone.
Kill your food with your face.
Well, today we are talking with Cy Montgomery and Matt Patterson, and we are talking about how amazing snapping turtles are. They're both authors of many books about animals, and their newest, Of Time and Turtles, and the Book of Turtles, is our focus today. They will both be with us to continue our conversations about turtles and what's being done to care and protect these animals. Let us know if you have a turtle story. Join the conversation. Leave us a comment on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Catherine Shen. Today, we're hearing from Cy Montgomery. She's the author of numerous books about animals, and her new books are Of Time and Turtles and The Book of Turtles. Matt Patterson is the book's illustrator, and he's also a wildlife artist and sculptor. During the course of a year, Cy and Matt both worked as turtle rehabilitator interns, doing the actual work for saving turtles. So, Cy and Matt, the first two turtle rescuers you introduced readers in the book are Alexia and Natasha. Can you tell us how they both got interested in turtles?
Well, one day, Alexia and Natasha were hanging out. They were going somewhere else, and they noticed a turtle in the road who'd been hit. And they both loved animals. They tried to save the turtle, but it was obvious it wasn't going to make it. And so they humanely euthanized the animal. But then they decided the next time they got together, they were going to help turtles cross the road. And soon they were working hard to save all these turtles. They were taking them to other turtle rehabilitators, of which there were few, and to veterinarians. But they realized that there were so many turtles getting hurt that folks were just going to be overwhelmed. So they learned the techniques for repairing shells. They learned a way to help the injured turtles as well as getting them across. And soon their apartment was filled with bubbling tanks and recovering patients. And now they have a house in Southbridge, Mass, and the entire 1,000-square-foot basement is filled with, at any one time, between 200 and 1,000 turtles. And the turtles are now spilling out into the
living room now.
Well, what really struck me reading the book is how utterly resilient turtles are. I just had no idea that they can, when they're able to heal so well and regenerate. So I imagine there's not really an average day rescuing turtles, but can you talk about what does the day-to-day look like? What does the rehabilitation efforts look like? Because you do describe everything from, you just mentioned fixing cracked shells and also giving them antibiotics. What does that look like?
Well, it really depends on the season. In the springtime, turtles are really active. First, the males are active, then the females are active because they're out nesting. So there's a lot of turtles that come in with cracked carapaces, cracked plastrons, the upper and the lower shell, broken jaws. Sometimes there's injuries from mowing injuries or dogs chewing turtles. So it's really, really hectic and crazy in the springtime. And, and even turtles that are dead, you can save if it's a female and it's in the springtime and she was on her way to nest, there's a good chance that she has eggs in her that can be saved. And so they'll take those eggs and incubate them. And then when they hatch in the end of the summer, release them. At the end of the summer for them, it's really busy because it's hatching season, and that's when they usually have about 1,000 turtles because they have all these eggs hatching. And so all these incubators are full of hatchlings, and they have to be released, and it can get pretty wild. And then in the winter it slows down a bit, but then they have a lot of people bringing in unwanted turtles and turtles like that. So there's kind of different seasons and different focuses for the seasons.
Yeah, spring and fall are the crazy times. I don't even know when these women get to sleep because
especially the spring.
Oh, I know. And so we were sometimes going several times a week. We actually kept this up for like 3 years.
About 3 years.
We got totally addicted to this. And at the same time, we were working at a nest protection site not far from our house. So it was turtles all the way down.
And we were driving, so we were releasing healed patients and we released them back to the spot where they were found. And we were driving all over central New England for this. And we were guided. Our navigator was blind, and Natasha is blind, legally blind. And somehow she was able to navigate us to these spots.
She's an amazing person. But Natasha's blindness gives her a really good perspective. And I've seen this with other people with disabilities as well. I have a friend who's he's now retired, but he was the head veterinarian at Tufts Wildlife Clinic, and he had one of his legs removed, and he'd be in there getting these patients, some raccoon or something, and like, oh, they have to amputate the leg, let's just euthanize him. And Mark would be standing there like, really? I don't think so. The thing about turtles and a lot of animals in the wild is they do just fine missing a leg or missing an eye.
I've seen turtles with 2 legs missing in the wild that healed on their own without any
surviving and
and thriving.
Yeah, absolutely thriving. And no, your life isn't pointless if you have some disability. And particularly, turtles, they can heal through just about anything. They can regenerate nerve tissue. And we were able to see some amazing instances of healing. It taught us, their motto there is never give up on a turtle. And we have, in fact, in my house, I saw a turtle go from dead to alive. I did CPR on a little tiny turtle the size of a quarter. I worked on that turtle for 45 minutes. That turtle was dead. He had drowned, but he came back to life. And I was later able to release him and his nestmates. They were painted turtles. They were all named, his name was Monet. The others were Manet, Bonnard, and Surratt, named after Pointilus mostly.
Beautiful.
And was able to release those in the spring into the wild.
And we learned turtle CPR when we were at the Turtle Survival Alliance's Survival Center, where they have some of the rarest turtles in the world. They have turtles that are extinct in the wild. And we saw a snapping turtle that had been caught in a trap a minnow trap. It got stuck in it, and it had drowned. And we saw that turtle come back to life. So that's where we CPR for turtles is not blowing into their mouths and pumping their chest like it is for people. It's pumping their legs, which pumps their lungs, and it helps get their heart going and get water out of their lungs.
And I just learned, this is amazing, of not just one, but 2 instances over the past 3 days of folks that heard me talking about this at one of our talks, who revived drowned turtles this way. It was something that I think was pioneered on sea turtles, who are great big creatures, but you can do this with an animal the size of a coin and bring them back to life.
Well, I'm learning so much just from this conversation. And you mentioned earlier that turtles are miracles, and it feels like that's your experience, is the miraculous of what they can bring, not just what you can bring to them, but also what turtles can bring to people. And you both were working on this book and did a lot of your research around turtles during the pandemic. Sai, I want to start with you first. How did that change your relationship with them?
Wow. Well, first, remember when the pandemic came, nobody knew what this strange contagion was. Nobody knew where it came from. Did it come on the mail? Did you get it at the grocery store? And there were no vaccines. There was really not much in the way of treatment. And people were scared to death. And at the same time, there was like horrendous political strife, and environmental catastrophe was upon us as California was on fire, and Australia was on fire, and the Amazon was on fire. It was a time of deep despair for many people. And it felt like even time had abandoned us. And to be working with these amazing, resilient animals, with these wonderful heroes, these fabulous women and men who were literally piecing the world back together, shell by shattered shell. This was so restorative for Matt and for me. And it also completely altered our experience of time itself. I could not have predicted when I pitched this book in early 2019 that this pandemic was coming and that time was going to grind to a halt for not just our neighborhood and not just our nation, but the whole world. But it became a time for Matt and me to learn from the turtles a new way to connect with time, a time that was sacred and healing and eternal at a moment in history when time seemed to stop for so many people.
Matt, did time stop for you too?
Time did. It slowed. Working with turtles teaches you patience. And it was like Sai said, it was a stressful time and a hectic time. And when we were working with the turtles, we would slip into, we call it turtle time, and everything around you just slowed down, and it taught you to focus. And, in a world where like we're constantly, we have iPhones or, apps, and there's constantly sounds going off. We're always distracted. It taught you to focus and it was really calming and relaxing. Yeah.
When you see a turtle favor you with its glance,
it's an intense glance. It's an intense stare.
Yeah. I mean, gosh, you really feel blessed by this. And paying attention, I'm not the first person to say this, but it's been likened to a form of prayer. It's like a sacred thing to pay deep attention. Turtles know how to do this. And when you see a turtle, even looking at the worm they're about to eat,
whatever they're looking at, yeah,
it's like these laser beams are coming out of their eyes, and they are so into the sensuous savor of life and the excitement of life and the depth of life. And that's what I think that we're often missing and lacking in our twitchy, dingy little world of atomized attention. It was such a relief to sink back into turtle time.
And with turtle time, they move so slowly, they age very slowly, and they have very long lives. And I guess they also die slowly. Can you talk about that process?
Well, like Sai said, when she talked about her example of bringing a turtle back to life, turtle's not dead until it's dead. But they do everything slow. They get, they get sick slow. They recover slow. But turtles have time, and that's what they need is time to recover. But I mean, we've seen turtles that it took years for them to heal and recover, and they did. They slowly healed. Their carapaces filled back in, and those turtles were released.
That was one reason that when I was deciding to write this book on time and turtles, I wanted to meet turtles in the wild, of course. But one reason that we wanted to apprentice ourselves to a turtle rescue, and this particular wonderful turtle rescue, was that we wanted to get to know turtles as individuals. And because they do take years to heal, you get to know them over the course of years. And some of them, their personalities, like Pizza Man, they're immediately apparent. Others, it takes a while for them to reveal their true selves. But the turtles are just as much the heroes in this book as are Natasha and Alexia and Michaela and Mike Henry and our friends at the turtle nesting site, and our friends at Turtle Survival Alliance. The turtles themselves have such distinctive stories and personalities and histories that getting to work at the Turtle Rescue really let us know them.
And so you both talked about meeting these turtles, and they teach you to savor and to live slower and to not be so twitchy, as we tend to be very twitchy in our dinghy world, as you mentioned. What else do you think turtles can teach us about patience and healing and time? Matt, let's start with you.
Well, turtles are tough. Turtles can survive injuries that other animals just couldn't survive. And it teaches you that these turtles want to survive. They want to live. They love their lives just as much as we love our lives. And turtles, they move forward, sometimes slowly, but determined.
And they don't give up. They teach you hope, and not hope against hope. But we saw turtles. Let me tell you about one of the patients that we met there. His name was Chutney. And this was a snapping turtle who'd been hit by a car. And I mean, he was practically a road crayon. He had cracked his shell. He'd broken his jaw. But worst of all, he had a brain concussion to the point that he didn't know which end was up, and he kept rolling upside down, thinking that that was a good thing. Well, it's not a good thing, and it was particularly upsetting because Alexia had to reset his broken jaw every time he flipped upside down. So they had to come up with a solution, and they came up with a brilliant solution, which they called the chutney tube. So the chutney tube was a regular pitcher. It was a plastic see-through pitcher, and his shell fit in perfectly. And they put him in there, and the handle acted as a kickstand so he wouldn't roll over. They tried like taping him down and weighing him down.
They tried a whole bunch of things.
But this turtle, he was there for 2 years, I think.
He was there for 2 years. When we met him, he was healed, and he was released that very spring, our very first spring working. We were there for his release. So that's a turtle that was really messed up, and most people would have given up on, but turtles are tough, and they come back, and they just need time.
And during the pandemic, when people seemed hopeless and languishing, that was a really wonderful lesson for us. They gave us not only hope, but they also showed us that we could help mend the world too.
Learn from Chutney.
Being able to help at that time of helplessness showed us that, we were not powerless, that we could help. And we wanted to spread that message because everyone listening to this show right now could be, like yourself, a turtle hero. There's so many ways that we can help turtles, and
simple ways that everyone can help turtles.
And of course, you both wanted to do this because you want to learn, you want to be a part of something, you want to help, and you mentioned the various seasons that everyone is so busy and you don't know how Natasha and Alexia got sleep, and there's also hatching seasons. So you both also spent time on the beach rescuing hatchlings. Can you describe what that looked like? Because this was also during the pandemic when technically volunteers were not supposed to gather.
Yeah, well, we didn't actually go rescue hatchlings on the beach. We worked with a nesting group, a permanent nesting group, and this is an area. It's behind a suburban development next to 2 baseball fields, a asphalt parking lot, a bunch of porta potties, and there's this amazing turtle oasis. And a retired school teacher and a librarian have been leading a team of volunteers for more than 15 years, protecting 5 different species of turtles, and 3 of those are endangered or threatened. And over those 15 years, they've protected hundreds of nests, and they've successfully hatched thousands of turtles. And these turtles now, from when they started, are starting to reach breeding age. And so they're starting to get turtles that are coming back. And they've had their best years these past few years for the most nests they protected. So that starts in the spring. And we would go out, look for the turtles nesting, or look for areas that were disturbed where the nests were, check them, then put a nest protector around them. Throughout the summer, they had to water them several times a week if it was too dry, if it was a drought. And then in the end of the summer, they would check like 3 or 4 times a day to see if the hatchlings had hatched, and they would collect them, record them, and then put them in the river.
So that was actually, those were freshwater turtles.
Yeah.
But you are right. We did work on a beach, but
We did do
not
a rescue.
when not, mostly people don't go on the beach of Cape Cod in December. But oddly, that was where we were helping turtles who weren't nesting, but who were cold stunned sea turtles washing up on the waves after a big storm.
And this is December in Massachusetts. And I mean, we had just had a snowstorm, and at my house, I had no power, and I left my wife with like over a foot of snow in the driveway and no power because, I mean, she wasn't thrilled about this because we had to go look for turtles.
You had important things to do.
Yeah.
But this was an amazing adventure. I mean, it was a night rescue. It was a winter rescue.
Windy.
You did not it was a beautiful night, though.
We went 10 miles to do. We walked 10 miles of the beach looking for these turtles, and these turtles were Kemp's Ridley sea turtles. They weren't adults. They were like teenagers. They were juveniles, and they're the most endangered species of sea turtle in the world.
And these guys, what happens is, this is all due to global warming, really. The Gulf of Maine is warming faster than any other body of water on the planet. And so on the Cape, the sea turtles, it's still warm, so they don't leave the protective waters of the Cape until it's too late, because the Atlantic itself is cooler. And being reptiles, they can't regulate their internal temperature. So soon it's so cold, they can't move. So they're like driftwood.
It's like hypothermia for a turtle.
Exactly, it is. And sometimes they drown. Sometimes they just can't move. And so you wait for these storms to wash them back up on the beach, because then you can rescue them. And Matt, who is a big, strong guy who used to be a wrestler, he got the wonderful job of having to haul these turtles for 10 miles on a sled.
My ice fishing sled.
Wow.
They got heavy.
At night in the whipping wind. But every one of them almost certainly was going to survive. You bring them back to the Audubon
Wellfleet Audubon
sanctuary. They have a place where the turtles, you can't warm them up right away because that will kill them. So you need some experts to handle them in those first days or hours. And then they go to the New England Aquarium's Quincy facility, which is a huge turtle hospital where any of their injuries, in addition to being cold stunned, are tended to, and they can be released in the spring.
Well, and I bet those turtles were really glad that both of you and others were there to save them that very cold and windy December evening. We're going to take a quick break here. We're hearing from Cy Montgomery. She's the author of many books about animals, and her new books are Of Time and Turtles and The Book of Turtles. Matt Patterson is also with us. He's the book's illustrator and also a wildlife artist and sculptor. They'll be staying with us. You can find a link to the books on our website, ctpublic.org/ where we live. And coming up, Cy and Matt will talk about adopting a turtle. This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Catherine Shen. Cy Montgomery is the author of the new book of Time and Turtles and The Book of Turtles, and Matt Patterson illustrated both of those books. And today they're joining us to talk about their time working with turtle rehabilitators and diving into the world of turtles. They're both animal lovers and now specifically turtle lovers. So somewhere on their journey, they had to adopt a turtle or 3 or 10. Cy, let's start with you. During your time working with turtles, it was only a matter of time before you adopted one, right? What was the experience like?
Well, some of the turtles that I adopted are actually living at Matt's house. But first, we had to find Matt and his wife, Erin, a house on our street so that I could conveniently visit with them. I would take care of some of Matt's turtles while he and his wife would go away.
Well, when we started this, I had this whole process. I had 3 or 4 turtles.
I think 3.
I think 3 turtles. Oh, one of them, Polly, I've had for 27 years. And so I didn't have that many turtles. And I now have 14.
You do.
Yeah, as one would do. Which, it sounds like a lot to some people, but some people I know, that's nothing. I know people who have hundreds of turtles. So
one of our friends, Chris Hagan, says that the calculus goes like this: 1 dog is 100 turtles in terms of time that you have to spend on them.
That's a new equation I'm going to have to work on.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
right.
But I ended up taking a lot of turtles. We went to a rehabber, Faith, a wonderful lady in New York. And originally I was supposed to take 1 or 2, so that means 2, 3-toed box turtles from her. And Erin, my wife Erin, went down with me and Cy, and we got there and we ended up picking out 2. And then Faith said, well, if you're going to take 2, why not take 3? And then she said, if you're going to take 3, why not take 4? And I could just see the look of terror in Erin's eyes because she didn't want too many turtles. She didn't want to become one of those turtle people. And these are 3-toed box turtles. These are really old turtles too, and they're non-natives. They can't be released, so they need a home. And we ended up taking 6 of them. And we got home, and I put them in this outdoor enclosure I had. And within an hour, one of them started digging a hole and laid eggs. And then the next day, another one laid eggs as well.
So that's actually how the calculus works.
Yeah, she called Cy. She said, I can't believe what happened. But the eggs weren't fertile, so that ended up not being a problem. And Fire Chief, who is, I always say, the star of Time and Turtles, he's this wonderful snapping turtle that we got to know and work with throughout this whole story. And we ended up adopting him because he was not releasable. His back legs do work. He was paralyzed at one point, but he can't use his back legs that great. His tail doesn't work. So if he flips over, he has trouble getting up. And the first thing I did when we bought a house on the same road as Cy is I dug a pond, a turtle pond, which again was not on Erin's list of first things to do, but it was on my list. And so we dug a turtle pond and we now have 14 turtles.
So if people, I was going to say, if people are interested in adopting turtles, 1 turtle or 10, it seems like, what do you want them to know before they actually commit to that?
That's a good catch. Well, the number one thing people need to know is a turtle is a long commitment, often lifelong commitment, and they often will outlive you. Some of the turtles I have are from people who had them and are no longer here. So turtles do live a long time. Certain turtles, like sulcatas, African spur-thighed tortoises, get huge. So they're not a really good species to have in Connecticut.
But Matt has one.
I do have one, but
she's in his will.
But I don't have any kids or anything, so I have space for turtles. But different turtles require different things. So I would say the number one thing: do your research, make sure you know what you're doing. And there are a lot of places where instead of buying a turtle, you can adopt a turtle, like the Turtle Rescue League. I believe there are some places in Connecticut. I know there are 2 turtle rescues in Connecticut: the Turtle Haven and the Turtle's Back, I believe it's called. And if people find injured turtles, they can bring them there. I don't know if they have turtles for adoption, but there are a lot of places where you can adopt unwanted turtles. And then that way you're not buying them from a pet store and
Yeah, SPCA's sometimes will
Sometimes they have turtles.
for
Yeah.
adoption. And you don't, I mean, you certainly don't want to buy a turtle that's an endangered species. And sometimes, or a native species, you don't want to get
No.
a native species. And if you see them in a pet store,
It's illegal.
That's illegal. And we see them in pet stores all the time, actually, which is bad. But having a turtle in your life is a wonderful thing.
It is a wonderful thing.
But they do need very specific care. And all of us who had little baby turtles when we were growing up and saw their shells get soft and they died, that is a real testament to how, turtles don't need much, but they do need very specific things. And you don't want to condemn a turtle to die.
So yeah, research. If you get a turtle, research it first.
Right. And we've got about a minute and a half here, but I do want to ask to, as we're having this conversation, there's so much joy, there's so much love, and we learn so much from these turtles. You both worked on the two books. One of them is a picture book. Why do you feel the need to get both those books out there?
Well, I write for both adults and children because although I like to write a lot of words and go on sometimes for 275 pages, children are not just the leaders of tomorrow, they're the leaders of today. So I really, really wanted to put a book in the hands of kids to make them into turtle stewards.
And that book is a celebration of turtles, a turtle amazing turtle facts and abilities and evolution and conservation. And we have turtle celebrities and extreme turtles, like the fastest turtle and Turtles Climb, things like that. So that book really introduces people to the world, to the amazing world of turtles.
How they can help too.
Yeah.
Crossing a turtle, cross it in the direction it's going.
Yep. If you find an injured turtle, call a rehabber. Like I said, there's some in Connecticut.
And protect wetlands. That's super important.
And you can support organizations like the Turtle Survival Alliance, who they work with turtles all around the world, and including species that are extinct in the wild. And seeing these people do this amazing work and dedicate their lives to it, because if you work with turtles, a lot of times you have to dedicate your whole life because everything happens so slowly.
Right.
And your success might happen years down the road.
Well, you both have been so inspiring to all of us here, and we hope our listeners enjoy this conversation because we certainly have. You've been listening to Cy Montgomery, who is the author of Time and Turtles and the Book of Turtles, and Matt Patterson, who illustrated both of the books. Thank you both so much for being with us this morning and sharing your stories about turtles.
Thank you, Catherine. It was a joy.
Thank you. That was fun.
I'm Catherine Shen. Today's show is produced by Tess Terrible. Our technical producer is Kat Pastor. Download Where We Live anytime on your favorite podcast app. And thank you very much for listening.